All right, well, welcome everybody back to our council meeting portion of today's sessions. I'll call the meeting to order. Martin is on the docket to do the land acknowledgement this morning, please. Martin?
For sure. As we gather, we recognize and acknowledge the traditional keepers of this land with whom we share today. The Township of Southgate is a part of the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Six Nations of the Grand River, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Haudenosaunee, and Saugeen Métis. The land that surrounds us is part of who we are as it reflects our histories. May we live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people.
Thank you, Martin. Is there anyone registered for today's open forum?
No, Mayor, no one today.
Thank you, Lindsay. I need a motion to confirm the agenda as presented. Jim and Barb, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest related to any item on today's agenda? Martin?
Yeah, I'll declare an interest on 8.2.1, Finance 2024-06 donations grants. My wife is part of a executive on one of the possible recipients.
Okay, thank you. And the clerk will look for the appropriate paperwork, I'm sure. Joan, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item number, should I say it from now? Closed session, item number, I can't find it.
It's the only item, Joan.
If it's a closed session, there's only one item. Yep.
14.
A closed session, I will declare pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you, Joan. Any others? Not seeing any. That is good. There's no delegations or presentations today. Adoption of the minutes of our council meeting from February 7th, closed session, and the special council meeting, budget meeting from the same date. Someone care to move that? Jim, seconded by Martin. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Reports to municipal officers, and the first is from our economic development officer, Brenna Carroll. She's here to give a report on the EDCO award, and I'm quite proud to say that I was actually there to see the award being presented. So we need a mover and second to receive that. Barb, seconded by Jason. Thank you. Brenna, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is a report to notify Council about this report that I compiled with a colleague from Huron County about public sector best practices for encouraging small business transition. And we're very excited and grateful to have received an award from the Economic Developers Council of Ontario. This is to notify Council that we'll put the report up on the website. It's more focused on supporting economic development professionals, but from our BRNE, we have noticed that there are quite a few businesses interested in succession planning. So we'll extract the resources specifically for businesses and make sure that those are up on the website and sent to businesses who indicate interest in creating succession plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenna. Any questions? Brenna, I just wanted to know, the succession planning is a big thing in the ag industry as well. I didn't see anything specifically to ag in your report or your papers. Is there an ag angle to that?
Yes, thank you. For our report, we focus more broadly across sectors on succession planning, but obviously ag is succession planning is a huge deal as well. And the advantage to doing this report with Huron County is my colleague from Huron County has been running succession planning programming for agricultural businesses in Huron County. So that's a resource. If we see that it's a really big need here, we could bring some of those resources over to Southgate. But you're correct. Most of our businesses, our research was much more broad on business, not specifically on sector.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you. Any other questions, discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Brenna. The next report is from our treasurer, Taylor McMahon. It is regarding donations, grants, and funding. Someone care to move that, please? Jason, second by Barb. Taylor, welcome again.
Thank you. So from last time when I had presented, we had from the Holstein Cemetery Board a $6,700 request for to put a driveway in. Upon talking with Brian Stevenson there, he let me know that that amount was 100% of their contract price and that he would have some internal costs as well. So that's why you'll see a reflection of $5,000 that is now requested, which reflects 50% of his overall cost. And then we had several other people reach out for funding, which rounds out the 25,000 for the year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, discussion? Barb?
Thank you, through you, and thank you, Taylor. I'm glad that we did get those requests. I did want to clarify that I think in your report, you indicated that there hadn't been an award in 2023 for, I'm going to say the Ag Society, or it could have been the rodeo. I'm just
The rodeo, yes.
the rodeo, but they did, and we did.
Oh,
Yes, they received $2,500 last year as well.
okay.
But it probably came in a separate report
Oh, okay.
later on,
Oh, okay.
because they, again, didn't meet that December 1st deadline.
Sure, okay.
The other thing that I wanted to just clarify for anyone who's reading this, the Southgate Community Connection is a not-for-profit organization separate from the church. They just have the ability to utilize Wesleyan Church to deliver, to cook their meal and deliver their program.
Mhm.
They are actually separate from Wesleyan Church. It's not Wesleyan Church benefiting from this.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Taylor. Public Works Manager Jim Ellis is up next regarding Dundalk Drinking Water Annual Report. And he'll also be speaking about the Dundalk Wastewater Report when we get to that. So I need a motion to receive this or approve it, I guess it is. Jim, second by Joan. Thank you. Jim, the floor is yours, please.
Good afternoon, good people. Our annual reports are due to the ministry with council endorsement by the end of February, so just bringing this forward. Nothing surprising, nothing out of the ordinary really to bring to your attention. It is noted that we've had a 7% increase in water usage. That's due to new homes coming online. There's other factors in there as well. There's water main commissioning on Victoria, Hambury, Ida that consume water for those tasks, and as well that will include firefighting and any water that went out. So we do have other ways of saying how much water's been accounted for or unaccounted for, but this is overall what's happened with the system.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any questions? Comments? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Carry on, Jim. You want to talk about wastewater now, please? Oh, I need a mover and seconder, sorry. Joan, did you move that? Thank you. Monica, you'll second? Thank you. Jim?
Very similar, same guidelines for reporting to the ministry. This one to note, it's not unusual for us to have operational shutdowns due to meeting effluent compliances. There are normal unionized ammonia, sometimes higher pH, which affects the ammonia calculations, total suspended solids and CBOD5. So those are seasonal with lagoon systems. So we do shut down. We're in a shutdown mode right now. Hopefully the new technology and the upgrades will bring us into, we're going to have tighter limits, but have better capabilities of delivering higher effluent quality to hopefully stay running longer. It is noted, I think, 25% increase of water coming into the wastewater system. Again, this is reflective of a little bit wetter year. Our I infiltration and inflow challenges that contributed to that. So again, this 24% isn't related so much to the growth and the new homes coming online. It's more related to water that is infiltrating the system. It is noted that the flow monitoring on the new subdivisions that they're fairly tight. So it's the older part of the systems, and there's still a contribution in some areas from some pumps or other sources that shouldn't be going into that stream, but are.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. Any questions, discussion? Barb?
Just one, you were mentioning it about the flow monitoring on the new subdivisions being less infiltration. Is that because of the stormwater management ponds that are relatively new to those new developments compared to the older original Dundalk?
Jim?
No, it's more due to pipe materials than that. So the older systems have asbestos cement sewer mains, whereas everything now is the HDP plastics and those type are got more gasket fitting. We also have that the infiltration that could be seen from some pumps or that kind of source, they have an outlet to a stormwater system in those areas. So whereas Main Street East, when we did that reconstruction, we brought services to property line that people could get their other water into it, their stormwater, but same with Victoria Street. So hopefully with Victoria Street, we'll see that tighten up a little bit too, but.
Thank you.
Yep. It's good to see there was no bypass events this year. That's always a good thing. The other thing I was wondering was, and I know in the past we've sent these reports to Six Nations downstream. Would that be a possibility again this year, Jim?
Yeah, that's our oversight. We should get that into the report. They're included in our correspondence
good.
of the reports, but yeah, noted and they do receive them.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions, discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Jim. Moving on to the planning department. We have the first report here regarding a OPA for Martin, NB Martin Manufacturing. Someone care to move that? Consider approval of the site. Yeah. Move receiver of the report. Jim, seconded by Jason. Who is going to speak to that? Stephanie. Welcome, Stephanie. Floor is yours.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council. I hope most of you are familiar with this application. It's been on the docket for quite some time, having gone through the county official amendment process, and now we're dealing with the local official plan amendment and zoning on this respective property. So just with respect to the local official plan amendment and zoning today, we are recommending approval of both application types. The planning report submitted has gone through an analysis of all planning policy documents that are governing our local planning. So we've looked at the PPS with respect to this application. And sorry, just to backtrack here, the proposal as a refresher is to permit an on-farm diversified use on an undersized agricultural lot being 10 hectares in size. And the county official plan amendment application was also required, and it was enacted and passed November 23rd, 2023. So generally, on-farm diversified uses are not permitted on agricultural designated lands with a lot area of under 20 hectares locally, except for bed and breakfast establishments. And so in this case, the on-farm diversified use includes a shop, power room, skid steer room, outdoor storage area, and gravel yard. And in total, the development would span 2,000 square meters in area, comprising 2% of the total 2% of the total area of the subject lands. So in this case as well, those size provisions of what's being considered today would be equal to what the Southgate official plan permits under the rural land use type for on-farm diversified uses. The comments received from agencies, so we heard from Historic Saugeen Métis, they had no objection or opposition. Hydro One had no comments or concerns. SVCA indicated the proposal has demonstrated consistency with section 3.1, which speaks to the natural hazard policies of the PPS, and consistency with the Grey County official plan and Township of Southgate policies for natural hazards. Public Works indicated the roadway, so Southgate Side Road 19 is a load restricted road. And the building department indicated the development will require applicable permits before construction, and the agricultural skid room appears to be in commercial zone. So through the comments received by both agency and the municipality, there were no major concerns needing to be addressed. The PPS analysis completed, it was confirmed that on-farm diversified uses are permitted in the prime agricultural areas, provided they meet the compatibility tests, so they are compatible with and not hinder surrounding agricultural operations. And all the setback requirements from the natural heritage features on site were confirmed. As per the county official plan, a thorough planning report was completed with respect to this application, and it was demonstrated that it meets the goals and objectives of the county official plan. And then when we look at the Township of Southgate official plan, so it meets the development policies, size and scale of the rural land use designation for on-farm diversified uses on lots less than 20 hectares in size. It was confirmed by the applicant that the owner is a bona fide farmer, and the overall area of the buildings will comprise of 14.5% of the entirety of the lands that would be devoted for an on-farm diversified use. And the D6 guidelines have been followed. So those are setback requirements, best practices when it comes to industrial type uses to help mitigate noise, noise coming from those types of uses to surrounding sensitive receptors. So generally, based on the policy review completed and the supporting documents provided as part of the complete application requirements, comments received, the proposal has demonstrated consistency and conformity with the goals and objectives outlined in the provincial policy statement, the County of Grey official plan, and the Township of Southgate official plan. The proposed local official plan amendment, OPA 1-23, and zoning bylaw amendment C9-23 should be approved as the development is considered appropriate for the area and is viewed as good land use planning. So that concludes my presentation here today, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Are there any questions? Barb?
Thank you, Stephanie. Through you, Mayor Milne. I still have concern about starting down this path. I understand the provincial policy statement allows for it. But we already see another application coming forward whereby a property with an on-farm diversified use is now looking to sever a smaller portion for another future on-farm diversified use. So I see this actually being the beginning as I expected. And I still have concerns about allowing this.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Martin?
No questions. I was kind of, when this first came up, I had the same thoughts. So I'm still kind of up in the air about it because I know they go by each file, but how many files are we going to see in the next 2 years? So yeah, I still have reservations as well, quite frankly.
Okay. Monica,
Yes, good morning. Sorry, good afternoon, rather. So I just had a question regarding traffic and road infrastructure. So given the Public Works comment about Southgate Side Road 19 being a low restricted road, what impact do we anticipate the proposed development will have on local traffic and road infrastructure? And are there any plans to manage increased traffic or upgrade infrastructure to accommodate this development?
Stephanie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Soares. Yeah, it's a really good question. We've received those comments. There was no additional follow-up with respect to the Public Works and recognition of whether or not there would be specifically incurred impacts to the local road system as it relates to this application type. As mentioned through previous discussions at public meeting, and when we were proceeding through the county official plan, recognition of these types of uses in the rural agricultural areas more broadly could be accounted for at more of like a township level analysis to gauge what types of uses are occurring in a rural area and what effects and impacts those are having on our local road system, and whether or not it would make sense to have certain roads more so designated to accommodate the specific commercial industrial type traffic over others, and just create a bit more of a strategic plan. It's hard to gauge the overall impact of this type of proposal as it relates to the road currently on site, recognizing as well there are existing, for example, agricultural operations that would have large tractors, trailers, that type of thing. So there is existing large vehicle traffic on this roadway system today. But I think doing a bit more of a comprehensive overall analysis of how that road fabric is incurring potential impacts might make sense in the future, to have better informed decisions around maintenance needs and that type of thing.
May I follow up?
Follow up? Yep, go ahead, Monica.
Thank you, Mayor. Just through you, Chair, and thank you, Stephanie, for that. I know it's a lot of what ifs and things of that nature, not knowing. So just to that point about, because the concerns, as we know, are the roads and being used appropriately and the wearing down of the roads, and they're very expensive. So if there's a suggestion that at the Southgate level, that we would look into that a bit more, that's something it would, delve into a little bit. But also just with regards to the community impact and feedback that you just mentioned, have we thoroughly assessed the community's feedback from the public meeting held on January 24th? And do we have a clear understanding of what the primary concerns or support expressed by the community regarding this proposal and how we've been able to address it in the planning process? Because as we can see, there's already a few questions on council. And then just thinking back to the community impact and feedback, did you have anything else to add to that?
Stephanie?
Sure. And yeah, so more broadly, there were no comments received from members of the public. And so, yeah, with respect to traffic impacts incurred locally or what the anticipated negative effects could be, there was no discussion as it relates to that or concerns more broadly. However, yeah, it is something to acknowledge that this will have a bit of an impact. It will change somewhat the existing conditions. And again, yeah, thinking about it a bit more strategically might be the best approach going forward. But yeah, I can certainly confirm that the localized impacts, as what we heard through the public meeting processes, have been addressed.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just a comment. I'm not very familiar with these types of undersized agricultural and rural lots, but I've read through the documents a few times, and I do concur with Deputy Mayor Dobrin and Councillor Shipson while I'm still learning about the unformed diversified usage. So yes, I do have a little bit of concern too. And Councillor Singh Soares about the load on the road, but I guess these are new things, so it's working through it. Thank you.
I think it would be fair to say too, that, yeah, there are some concerns about additional traffic on the road, but I don't think we should forget that this community that we're talking about travels on the roads with horse and buggy, which has absolutely no effect on our road system. So, or no poor effect anyway. So there's some give and take here. It's not all more heavy traffic. So I don't think we need to lose track of that one. Jason, did you have a comment? You're okay? Oh, Jim, sorry, it was your hand I saw earlier. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, if I could add, when I first heard the discussion starting here, it sounded like it was more to do with, this is a load restricted road. And let us remind each other that pretty much 99.5% of our roads are load restricted. So
Yep.
the only exceptions are Ida Street South and Eco Parkway and Side Road 55 off of Highway 89 for a couple hundred meters. So these shops, have been dotted throughout our community, throughout our roads. So I don't see being able to make a master plan with all that's in place right now. What going forward is the no winter maintenance roads that are not developed yet and maybe considering developing for the future, but they're not built to a standard anyway. So there's a way to, have them addressed at the time, but I think we've already let things go here far enough that just because these are load restricted roads doesn't mean that we're not allowing truck traffic on them. So I just wanted to
Yep.
throw those 2 cents in.
Thanks, Jim. Any further discussion? Jason?
Yeah, just to add, maybe Jim, it wouldn't hurt to some members of council that don't know give them an actual, what the load restriction is like and when, that time of year and everything. And 'cause I think there's a bit of a gray area, but no, I hear Barden's concerns a little bit, but this particular community, as far as I'm concerned, they do what they say. They always follow all the rules. And, look at the tax we'll get off this little bit of a property here. And if somebody, I'm all for agriculture, but for that little bit of agriculture land, we're using up a lot of it anywhere else. So I think that's a good thing, but we do have to look at it case by case, I would say, for sure, which we are gonna.
Thanks, Jason. Stephanie, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just wanted to further iterate that this lot was existing. So there was no creation of a new undersized farm lot in the nature or as it relates to these applications. So the creation of an undersized agricultural lot in this case would have predated the local planning policy regime as it governs lot creation today. And so going forward, undersized lots of this size are not permitted as of right, and would have to go through an amendment process. And so it is it's dealing with somewhat of a historical piece here in that this lot has been created undersized. And so the notion of it being farmable can be quite challenging in that it is only 10 hectares in size. And so the way in which on-farm diversified uses and the policy has come forward from the province is that it is to support and help supplement the economic base of a farmer. And in this case, I would see it as being quite reasonable in that the farm lot size is quite small. However, looking at the satellite and confirmation from the landowners, they are farming it. So just wanted to offer that piece of clarification that there was no lot created as a result of these applications and no farmland has been removed as a result of this proposal either.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, we're ready for the question. Okay, we're just receiving this report at this point. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Now we'll move on to the bylaw, which will implement the OPA for the same piece of property. Somebody move that, please. Jason, seconded by Jim. Stephanie, anything to add regarding the bylaw itself? No? Okay. Questions or discussion around the bylaw? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is opposed, if any. That is carried. Now we're on to the zoning bylaw amendment, which will, this bylaw will implement that. Someone care to move that, please? Jim, seconded by Joan. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Anything to add, Stephanie? Nope. Okay, good. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephanie. I think is that all of yours?
It is, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is a planning deferral. I believe it's Bill and Victoria are up for this one. Someone care to move this, please? Barb, seconded by Joan. Thank you. Bill, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Milne and council, staff. This rezoning proposal was before you, I guess, about a month ago, and there was a public meeting held. It is an interesting new kind of development. They seem to be popping up more and more in various communities. It's the back-to-back semi-detached or fourplex or whatever you want to call it. You'll recall at the public meeting that we did have 2 or 3 neighbors express concerns with traffic and public safety, parking, service capacity, privacy. With the back-to-back homes, of course, there's no private yards, so these ones would have their yards facing Gold Street and Hagen Street. We also learned that Gold Street would have to be extended with water and sewer and roadway to access the 2 units that would face that street. You have a request from Cuesta Planning to defer this to the March 6th meeting, and township staff support this deferral. We had very, very preliminary discussions about what might be helpful as new information to council to help with your decision. So I'm imagining they may revisit the traffic issue and perhaps have some information on traffic generation for it. As you know, the school's nearby and it's functioning, it's quite busy, I'm told, and there's parking on the street, and so there's concern with the neighborhood about access. I don't know if they're going to change the form of development. We talked about other ideas, such as one semi with garages at the back and apartments over top. These are the kinds of things that are allowed or going to be allowed through the new provincial planning statement and the changes to the Planning Act that allow for up to 3 units on for urban residential lands. So I'm not sure if they're going to look at that form because there was concerns of privacy and so forth, but needless to say, it gives them a few more weeks to decide how they want to approach you again. And what we would do is give notice to the people that spoke at the public meeting and those that maybe had significant comments from agencies that council would consider this again on March 6th. It's a procedure under the Planning Act that lets changes to applications be made to keep the public informed and to get information that you may need to help with your decision. So that's our recommendation in this case, that you defer it to March 6th and that notice be given to the neighbors who spoke that this is when it will be coming back to council.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Any discussion? Barb?
Thank you, through you. Hi, Bill. Just a
Hi.
quick question. The people who actually spoke at the public meeting or submitted comments in writing up until this point would be notified of the deferral. What about the immediate neighbors that would be most affected by any change in proposal if they had not commented at the public meeting? Are they circulated?
Oh. My practice in the past has been not to circulate anyone who didn't express anything either at the public meeting verbally or in writing to you. You can include others in that proposal if you wish. I mean, in theory, if they didn't comment, then they may really love this form of housing that's being proposed. And if it were changed, then they might have concerns. So, I get your point, and we can include the two abutting neighbors if you wish. It's just a question of whether, then what about the ones maybe across the street or 2 doors down that didn't participate? So the Planning Act talks about people's appeal rights being based on them providing feedback at the public meeting. And so if anything like this ever went further than, say, this council, they would have had to express themselves to you either at the time that they had. So we can include additional people in the circulation if you wish, but my practice in the past has been only to those people who had participated in the public meeting.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm not suggesting that we only circulate to, certain individuals. I guess my question is there still opportunity for people to submit their comments if they haven't already done so, since this hasn't come before council in a report for approval?
Right. And I would say yes to that. In fact, anything that would come in between now and March 6th, we would put on the agenda for your consideration. And we would have our technical report at that time too. And it would have the benefit of whatever new information may come from Cuesta in the coming few weeks.
Okay. Just Martin.
Yeah, just a comment. This kind of building and zoning, it's only going to happen more because this is the missing middle that everybody's talking about. So if we don't get it right now and make sure everybody's involved, it's going to be harder down the road when there's other lots come up in town where a fourplex or something else is going. So the deferral is a good idea.
Yep.
Especially when they're not sure, like
For
the
sure.
actual applicant.
Monica, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just through you, Chair, to Bill, good afternoon to you. And just to the point of Deputy Mayor and Councillor Shipston is kind of in line with what I was also thinking about in terms of setting future precedents. So again, should this amendment be approved, what precedent might this set for future applications of similar nature? How do we intend to ensure that such developments continue to meet the stringent criteria necessary to protect agricultural land, or in this case, with this particular area, and to allow for diversified modes of home? So that is all I would really encourage, like what you were just speaking about, and Deputy Mayor and Councillor Shipston, with regards to ensuring that we have more feedback from the area, and then that will already start to create a type of stringent procedure for future applications.
Yeah, I mean, it is to some degree it's precedent setting. We do have a similar type proposal that's not far from coming to council, and it's, as I recall, 5 units facing one street and 5 units facing another street. So you have back-to-back townhomes. And so, frankly, I think it's helpful for me to have a little time to think about the impact of this kind of development on your neighborhoods. Because as I said, it's a relatively new approach. There's some things that I like about it in that, it's home ownership. And so I think one of the councillors mentioned the missing middle of home ownership. I think this kind of development is very efficient that way. But it's going to be something new for neighborhoods. And whether they feel it's compatible or not will remain to be seen. But the neighborhoods are all going to change as more and more people start picking up on the provincial housing initiative to allow up to 3 units on every urban single family, semi-detached, and townhouse property. So, all these neighbors beside could eventually be building garages with units over top. These are going to really change our neighborhoods, but it may change them for the good because you'll have more people living there. You'll have housing for a variety of different people at different tenures and costs. So there's lots of positives about this kind of infill development, but the form of it is what's precedent setting. And I think we have to collectively be happy that this is something we want to see in our neighborhood, and that the applicants are really insistent upon providing, because I mean, obviously they're going to have to deal with, if this is not approved, they'll have to decide whether they want to pursue it further, or if they amend their proposal, they have to have something that works for them from a sales perspective. So it is precedent setting. It's an interesting little case. We have another one coming probably within another month or two. It's 10 units. So I think it's good to have a little bit of time to defer this, consult with the people and the applicants, and make sure that we're all comfortable with how this will move forward.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. All those in favor of deferring this? Martin, to be sure, we're not
Oh, I know,
we're not arguing about whether this is a
Oh,
good
no, no.
development or not. It's to defer
All
it.
right. Oh, yeah.
The deferral was asked by the
Oh,
proponent.
yeah, I know.
Okay, go ahead.
I just a question for Bill, and with all this and this possible development. Bill, is shadowing still a consideration or concern when it comes to buildings and the planning?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one over the years that I've heard. It to some degree, it would have to be, as I recall, this is one story, but you know, if you're looking at a 3-story building like that filled up the entire lot and took away all access to light and air for a neighboring property, that could be a planning argument that would suggest a reduction in the height or something like that. But it is a consideration. It's not one that honestly the province is really too worried about when they allow up to 3 units on every single family, semi, and row house in urban areas. So we're going to have structures going up that may create or limit access to light and air that people never thought of before. You're going to have garages going up in backyards with apartments over top, so you'll have people living above a garage basically in another person's, with a view of another person's backyard. So like I said, I think it's very, very important that we get the housing, but it's going to change our neighborhoods considerably. I feel like it's really going to repopulate them. You're going to have a whole range of people living in communities now, whereas a lot of the times it's families, 2 or 3 people, and it could go back to having, 10 people on a lot, which in the old days it was all part of one family. So it's really going to be an interesting change. But your question about shadow and access to light and air is still a consideration, but I think you're going to see neighborhoods change that way too, and I don't think there'll be too much weight put on that unless it's something really significant.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Done? Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Call the question. All those in favor of deferral? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next, which is the Cleon Martin on behalf of Woodland Springs School. It's a rezoning request. Someone care to move that? Barb, seconded by Jason. Bill, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Millen. This development started before my involvement with Southgate, but it's a school site. I think we've all seen it driving by over the years, but it's on Southgate Road 4. The proposal is to add some expansion lands through severance from the main farm property. And those are shown in the school site detail and in the sketch that they submitted with their application. So the existing school is there. You can see their septic system. And then they propose to add those kind of an L-shaped amount of land to it. And this rezoning would put the entire expansion area and the existing school in a CF zone. And this is permitted through the provincial consistent with the provincial policy statement. And it complies with the township official plan. And of course, the zoning would need to go to a new category. It's like community use, which the official plan allows for schools kind of in the middle of agricultural areas for what they call the official plan calls the horse and buggy community. So I'm not sure whether that's the right term anymore, but in any event, it's my opinion that the rezoning is appropriate. That the only deficiency that is there now is the front yard of the school, but that is existing. So any additions that they do to the back and so forth would have to comply with the new zoning provisions in the CF that are already there. So I think this expansion and putting it in the zoning is a good idea, and obviously they'll come forward with whatever plans they have for expansion in the future with the proper zoning in place.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions? Jason?
Just a quick one. When it turns to CF, do the taxes change much on that, or is there? I wasn't sure.
So I'm not 100% sure on how private schools are dealt with from a property tax perspective, but if there's an addition put on, then typically those kinds of permits go to it used to be MPAC. I'm assuming they're still doing that, and it could impact on that. But honestly, I'm not entirely sure how a private school for the horse and buggy community might be taxed for property tax.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is the bylaw to implement the zoning bylaw amendment for that same school property. Jason moves, seconded by Jim. Thank you. Questions? Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next planning report, which is regarding the Southgate Renewables Holding Corporation, which is down in the Eco Park there. I need somebody to move that motion, please. Jim and Barb, thank you. Bill, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Millen. This is a rather complicated proposal because it's had past rezonings, it's had a past minor variance, and then it now has a new zoning. And so what we've attempted to do through the staff report is put a new zoning that applies to the entire lands that allows for the biodigester and the organic processing of organic material. And that would have a zoning with a series of site and building regulations that would apply. But in case something happened in the future that perhaps they wanted to abandon this or it didn't go forward, and I have no evidence that they would be, but because they've had very well developed site plans and strong consulting work on it. And so they look very, very serious. But to avoid having to have multiple rezonings again, I'm recommending that you allow the M1 that underlays it to remain, but not on the same lot as on if the biodigester goes ahead. So they would have that option to develop the biodigester and the organic processing of the material into natural gas, I think it was. But they would also have the M1 zoning underlying in the event that it would evolve into some other proposal in the future. So I just like to see that kind of flexibility. So the front of the property was zoned M1434. That allowed the biodigester, and then I gather they acquired the back piece later on, and as their plans grew, and it's zoned M1. So everything would be put into the same industrial zone, which is, I guess, in 553, M1 553, and the H. The holding zone would remain on there, and those conditions on the holding zone relate to signing a site plan and development agreement with the township. So they don't get development zoning and they can't proceed with their project until the site plan agreement is signed for that project. So that's why the holding zone is in place. That holding zone was, I believe, on the front M1434 lands, and it would remain on the entire property, which would be M1535. 553. On the second page of the report, they've done have one site plan there that kind of highlights what's going to happen on the site, where the digester tanks are, where the organics are received, where the office is, what the parking lot, where the parking is, and so forth, fire routes. There's multiple plans within this proposal. There's a bit of a building elevation, which kind of shows a relatively attractive office portion of the site. So from the street, it's going to look rather professional. And then the activities, of course, that process materials will be behind that and in the back. So the proposal, there's three parts, as I mentioned. Place industrial zone parts of the site in a single new industrial zone that allows the biodigester and the organic waste processing. This was already allowed in the front part of the zoning, and so it would apply to the entire site, entire site. And then the new parking rules, 14 spaces, lot coverage of 53%, and a building height of 18.5 meters. Those are carried on into the new zone and would apply to the entire site with the holding provision. And those were things that were approved through the minor variance back in 2022 under file A7. So those are carried on into this new zoning with the holding provision that would apply across the site. And then, as I also mentioned earlier, the M1 site regulations would apply to this building as far as setbacks and so forth. And the new general industrial zone would have underneath it the M1 zone in the case something were to happen and they had to go back to a different use. So Loft Planning did a extensive planning justification report, and they did draft a zoning bylaw amendment, and we did send a copy of our zoning proposal to them. I'm not sure, I did not hear any feedback from them, so I'm assuming they're happy with the approach. There was also a stormwater management report, and that has been reviewed by Public Works and the Triton Engineering side. They have requested a certain number of ERUs to this development. I briefly mentioned to council that we were trying to nail down our procedures in light of changes to how site plans are approved. And so that ERU would likely be given a preliminary allocation under your policy through the site plan agreement, and then they would sign a final agreement on the ERUs before they can get their building permit. So we can talk more about that as we go forward, because we have a couple of other site plan agreements that are coming up with this process to be figured out. So I've been working with Jim and some of the Triton people and Victoria and Alicia, and to some degree with Dina as well, on how we can make this work. So they also did a wetland analysis, and the Conservation Authority and County Planning did not object to that. They've looked at that, and they appear to be fine with what's being proposed for the site from an environmental perspective. They've done grading, servicing, and sediment control. There's sufficient information that we believe it can obviously occur properly. And a lot of this detail will come back through the site plan and control process, but from a zoning perspective, it's still important to have the holding put on, and that way we have all this nailed down and put in place in the site plan agreement before the H is removed. And I'm sure council's done this before, but the process of removing a holding provision, council can do by bylaw, and you don't have to hold a public meeting. It just, if they meet the conditions that are set in the zoning, then you would pass a bylaw and remove the H. That would put the overall zoning in effect. And then once they sign, having signed the site plan agreement, and if they've given proper building plans to the building department, they would be entitled to a building permit. So you will see this again to remove the H, and you will see this again to sign the site plan agreement when that material is all ready to go. So first step, of course, is getting the zoning on the entire site. I can go through the provincial policy provisions. It's obviously a very interesting project. I believe it's consistent with provincial policy. It's consistent with the industrial designation in the official plan. The hazard land areas are protected and not impacted by the proposed new zoning. The EP that kind of surrounds it and goes into the back, environmental protection zoning, it remains unchanged. And of course, in this case, we have some professional experts telling us that there's more than a justification to allow this development from an environmental perspective. So we recommend you consider approving the rezoning to put it in a new industrial zone with an H, and that the water and sewer allocation be assigned if the site plan and development agreement is pursued in 2024. This is an interesting issue we're having, particularly for the industrial park. There's big projects wanting water and sewer, and everyone wants to secure something and they want to go ahead, but sometimes they take several months or more than a year to come forward and actually use the allocation. So it's important that for council and for public works process, we make sure these allocations are coordinated and brought forward so that, you know, Jim is happy with the allocation and Triton Engineering can justify it from their perspective, and that you know that your capacity is being protected, because it's not, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about it, but you know for sure with your lagoon project coming up that there is some limited capacity there. So we have to carefully manage these allocation requests, and Jim and Triton Engineering side have been very good at providing comments on that. That's my recommendation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bill. A lot of material there. Questions, or discussion? Barb?
I thought I had it figured out. Now I feel like we're on who's on first. So if you could just, first of all, ERU is the water and wastewater capacity allocation.
Yes.
Right? Thank you. And the use of the property is a biodigester. The use hasn't changed. So changing the zoning isn't going to allow for some other permitted processing other than what was originally intended. And that M1 434 is the industrial classification, the biodigester. And the 553 governs height, parking, and other lot coverage. Have I got that right?
Well, actually, that was very good. Just a small thing. The M434 or whatever that original zoning was, it will go away. So we would repeal that. So part of the zoning amendment repeals that. So it does not exist. And so the new 553 industrial zone would allow everything that the original 434 zone allowed and what the minor variance A7 allowed, and it would be allowed on the whole lot, not just the front. So I hope that helped, but you had it pretty good, except the 434 original zoning would disappear, and we would have one fresh new zone with all the regulations on the entire site now that would deal with the biodigester and organics, and there would be no new uses as far as the processing that they proposed on there. There'd be no new uses included in this. It would only apply now to the back of the lot, which they have acquired in the process of development.
Okay, now you're losing me again.
Right.
Sorry, the 434 is going away,
Yes.
but the use is being incorporated into 553.
Yes.
The use hasn't changed. Their ECA hasn't changed. They haven't applied for any new products to be brought in. I've read that in their EBR. This just applies to the entire property so that everything is encompassing under one zone. There's nothing being slid in there or that we don't know of. It's just, everything's just being cleaned up.
Yes.
Good. Monica, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, Chair. I had two questions, but I will see. I'll just start with the first one. That was, I thank you, Bill, for going through this. It is quite a big file. It reminds me of a file we had during once for Committee of Adjustment. I'm not sure if you were included in that, but it's kind of giving me memory to that effect. But with the water and sewage allocation strategy, just considering the significant water allocation requested and the necessity for on-site water storage for firefighting alongside the sewer allocation challenges, how does the current proposal address these issues, and what strategies are in place to ensure that the development does not strain our existing municipal services?
Right. So, good question. I won't pretend to know all of the details on that because it's an engineering perspective, but what protects council and the township is the holding provision, because all that, as far as water allocation and sewer allocation and fire protection, and whether they need to do on-site storage to ensure they have a proper pressure for that, that would all be covered in the site plan agreement and the development agreement for the property. And they don't get to get a building permit until that holding zone comes off. And they don't, and you would pass that bylaw when you're confident and that the conditions that are there have been met. So that's how you're protected with that holding zone.
Thank you. Chair, may I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So thank you for clarifying that, Bill, because that's the connection I was looking for with regards to the holding. Just trying to understand everything. So that's very poignant. So thank you for that. So just kind of related, not related, in regards to in light of the environmental protection zone. So when I was looking at it, I was trying to understand. So the EP zone running along the southwest side of the lot, what specific measures are proposed to protect that area during the development and operation on site? And furthermore, how do the servicing and stormwater management plans address the unique challenges posed by the site's industrial activities, environmental sensitivities? Now, is this connected to the H holding that you were talking about?
To some degree, because that will all be covered in the site plan agreement. But if you look at the drawing, I'm not sure what page that is, the full site plan, it's not entirely clear. And as I said, there's kind of a lot of drawings with this proposal.
Page 2, I think.
Yeah, many of them are engineering, but you can see the EP area on the side. I guess it would be where fire route and parking is and gravel parking. That's that EP area. So it's preserved and protected. So they're not developing it. And then you can see there's a bit of a separation too from it. And then there's some kind of feature along there that would prevent the erosion and runoff and so forth. And there's a couple of other things in there that are kind of squares you can't read. So they have proposed mitigation there to protect that EP area. But again, it's another engineering question. And you're absolutely correct. The H protects the township and council because they have to have all those details to Jim's satisfaction and to the Triton engineers' satisfaction addressed in the site plan agreement. And they'll have to comply with what their expert studies have said as well. So those studies can be part of the site plan agreement too. So we won't bring that agreement back for you to sign until those things are all included in there. And then at that same time, you would probably do the bylaw to remove the H. But as of now, what they're showing is the EP area being protected and some mitigation measures around the edge to not further impact it.
Perfect. Thank you for that connection. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Monica. Jason. Yep, go ahead.
Regards to the water allocation and that, I don't know if that's to you, Bill or Jim. I read down further and it says if we get it done in 25, I'm not really understanding that 100%. Do we have the capacity or we think we do? To me, that's how I read it, but I'm not sure.
Who wants to have a run at that? Jim or Bill?
I mean, I'll be quick. Jim probably will answer more correctly than I, but there is capacity, but we want people who want these substantial size commitments to move ahead with their development within a time frame. So your policy currently allows up to 3 years. And I think Jim and Triton engineers are suggesting that maybe we try and, if these developments are going to go ahead, then they should go ahead and get that allocation because it's not unlimited. Is that, I don't know if through you, Mr. Chair, if I've answered that right for Jim's perspective, but.
Yeah, I think so. It goes back to our other discussions around, people buying property and speculating. It's sort of the same thing. If they want these allocations, they need to get going and get using them because there's other demand for those allocations. So we don't want them all sitting on paper somewhere. We need to see them being used. Is that fair, Jim? Go ahead.
Yeah, and this has come to our forefront more recently, and we're dealing with it with some other developments and some allocation they're asking for. Currently, we are good with water allocation. The sewer is tight. We do have some, so with what they're asking for is limited because they're not asking for the same water for wastewater like allocation. So it is doable. But to Bill's point and what we're seeing coming forward here, we need to, if we're committing, I think our policy is a little too lenient right now with 3 years. We want to bring something forward with like 1 year site plan agreements with conditions. That's something moving forward in the interim. And, we've seen projects, this one, for example, how long has it been? 6 years ago. If we could have allocated 6 years ago and still be nowhere. So I think this is prudent that we keep on top of our, what we're allowing to be put out there for future use.
Thanks, Jim. Barb?
A quick question about what was there? If I recall, there was discussion and it may have just been an offside, but the potential for Southgate Renewables to utilize water from the lagoons for part of their process. And part two was what happens to our wastewater and our water, but more importantly, our wastewater, if every urban unit takes up that as a right to 3 units per residential lot.
I mean, that's a good question, Counselor.
Maybe not
but
part of this.
Yeah, I'm
The
not
first
sure.
part, yes.
We don't need to go down that road, but Bill, if you want to take a run at it, go ahead.
About the first one, we can disregard the second part.
Yeah. So your second one really tweaked my imagination. So if you could re-ask the first one.
Yes, the first part was there discussion at any point, I recall, of, and maybe this is a Jim question, of potentially using water from the lagoons to avoid using wastewater capacity or water capacity for either their process or fire suppression.
So that is a Jim question. I do recall him saying that there had been discussions, but I don't think those discussions are finalized yet.
I'll let Jim have a run at that. And I'm sorry, Bill, for taking away the fun question, but it's really not pertinent to what we're looking at here today. It's a good question, but it not today. Jim.
Yeah, ongoing with Southgate Renewables. They are exploring with the ministry for amendment to take water from cell 3. That's still being looked at for approval if possible, and we are willing to look into it deeper with them. So we have a bit of a vested partnership that way, but it will all depend on the ministry and what they allow. And then if they will allow it, we'll have to figure out a design for a pump station that will all be at their cost. And what their limits will be, and there'll be more to figure out, but it first of all needs approval from the ministry to move a step forward, so.
Yeah, yeah, it might be a while before the ministry gets around to that. All right. Good discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Now the next item is the bylaw to put that zoning bylaw amendment into place. I need a mover. Barb, thank you. And a seconder, Joan, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Down to the last one, Bill. This
Thank
one
you.
is regarding a zoning bylaw amendment for Peter and Rebecca O'Donnell. I need a motion to do that. Who'd like to move that? Joan and Martin, thank you. Bill,
Thank you, Mayor Milne and
or are you
Council.
still back on the water problem?
No, no, but it had
Okay.
my mind racing because I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay.
I don't think many municipalities do, but anyway, yeah, so the O'Donnell proposal, this one is another one that kind of initiated in 2022, I believe. There were several severances in Cedarville, and I tried to do a little illustration of what they had in mind there with their lot creation. It's kind of been, you had a public meeting back in, I want to say 2023, so January 25th. And there was one person who commented on this proposal. So this is another one of those give notice to people that council intends to consider a bylaw. What needed to happen is that the zoning needed to come back for you to adopt, and it has not come back yet. That is one of his conditions of severance, along with a few other conditions that relate to road widening and turning radiuses on, I don't know how you say it, Ferris Road Drive in Cedarville. So what we're suggesting is that we give notice to the person who submitted comments and to any other agencies that the proposed zoning file C22-22 would be coming back for a bylaw at your March 20th meeting. Just this week, we received the reference plan for the roadway. So by reference plan, I mean the drawing that shows these lots done by a surveyor, and it shows the road widening that we would be getting on that drive, Ferris Drive, and a turning area for township to acquire so that plows and so forth can go down and turn around without having to go into someone's driveway. So this is a good kind of rural infill in a village area that it does take some agricultural land out of production, but it does add some rural lots that obviously will contribute housing to the community. So Mr. O'Donnell has been attempting to fulfill his conditions. One last condition that he has to negotiate is roadway upgrades. And him and Jim, the Public Works Manager and Director, have been having conversations on that. And there's a draft agreement that now that we have the reference plan in can be finalized. So the only other matter that needs to be addressed is the archaeological study that was done, and spoke to Mr. O'Donnell, I think, last week. And he confirmed that they did do that investigation. He does have a report, and I'm trying to recall which First Nation band had been there, but they did participate in the property walk across. What they do is plow it up, and they walk and look for any artifacts, and there's an archaeological expert there. And I don't think they found anything. I think, according to Mr. O'Donnell, everything is fine from that perspective, but we'll need that report, and he is going to provide that to us. So everything is moving forward to him meeting his conditions of the severance that was approved some time ago. Part of that is getting the zoning bylaw to you, and we propose to do that on the 20th of March. And at that time, hopefully we'll have a lot more information on the archaeological and the road improvements, but it's all moving forward to final approval. And I think Mr. O'Donnell was anxious to see this move forward.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. Any questions? Call the Monica, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just through you, this may be to staff or to Bill, I'm not sure, but just to touch back on the 2023 meeting for public consultation follow-up. Now, you may have mentioned it, but I'm having a little difficulty. I can hear you, but it's getting muffled a bit, so I apologize if you've already answered this, but did we receive any updated additional feedback or concerns received from the community since then? And if so, how have they been addressed and incorporated into the current proposal?
I would like to give you more information on that. We'll send them notice that this is coming back to you. As I recall, it was things like traffic and new lots on ag land and how that's going to change the area. But I think with the road widening and a proper turnaround and the road improvements and the archaeological investigation, I think a lot of those will be addressed, but we will give I think it was only one person, it may have been more, but we'll give that person notice that this is coming forward, and I will address in my report to you their comments and give you more information on how they were addressed. But as I recall, they were mostly changing the area and impact on ag land and traffic and those sorts of concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Victoria. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is there are no bylaws or motions. Is there any notice of motion? No. Consent items, regular business. There's one item there. And it's a conference report from Councillor Shipston. Do we need to remove that? I don't think so. Anyone care to move that, please? Receive that. Barb and Martin, thank you. All those in favor? Sorry? Go ahead. We got time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Shipston for the report. It's very helpful, and it's actually required by our policy. It's not an option, it's a must. Submit a report following the attendance at a conference on the taxpayers' dime. But I find it very helpful when you can't attend or you're going to go to another conference. You get to share the information of what you actually learned or heard or brought back. And so I appreciate the report. And I'm looking forward to when the policy comes back for review and perhaps enforcement of the requirement to submit a report following a conference going forward in 2024.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of receiving this? That is carried. Thank you very much. Correspondence for information. There's two items there, both from, well, one's from the OPP, which is news. I won't say it's good news, but it's news. And also from Enbridge Gas. Does anyone wish to remove either of those for further discussion? Barb?
I'd like to remove the 11.2.2 Enbridge Gas OEB decision on phase 1.
Okay, thank you. So that only leaves the other one to receive. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, thank you. And Joan, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. We might as well deal with the Enbridge Gas one now. Barb?
Thank you, Mayor Milne. And I'm wondering if Lindsay would be able to put the motion up on the screen. I apologize for its length, but I tried to incorporate an appropriate resolution and in order for it to be sent on to the various parties. It's with regard to the importance of natural gas in rural Ontario. And with council's indulgence, if you'd like just to read it, or shall I read it out loud? It's entirely up to council's wish. I know
I think
it's-
it was in the package, was it not?
Mm.
Oh, it was not. Well, you might as well read it then.
I'll read it then. Whereas Ontario needs clean, reliable, affordable energy that complements other energy sources, and whereas rural and agricultural communities cannot rely solely on green energy, and whereas millions of Ontarians rely on natural gas to keep their homes warm, and many agricultural and other ag-related businesses depend on natural gas for day-to-day operation, and whereas natural gas plays a critical role in Ontario's energy evolution mix while supporting the reliability of Ontario's electricity system, whereas natural gas meets 30% of Ontario's energy needs, which cannot be easily or quickly replaced, and even in the worst weather conditions, the existing natural gas system delivers. And whereas the Enbridge Gas 2024 rate rebasing application was designed to provide customers with safe and reliable natural gas at a reasonable cost, in addition to measured steps to help Ontario advance a practical transition to a sustainable energy future. And whereas the Ontario Energy Board decision puts future access to natural gas in doubt and sets a deliberate course to eliminate natural gas from the Ontario's energy mix. And whereas without natural gas, communities across Ontario will feel the impacts of their everyday lives through loss of energy affordability, economic growth, energy access, and energy security. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Southgate do hereby receive the correspondence from Enbridge Gas attached regarding the OEB decision, and the Council support the government's quick action in addressing the consequences of reduced access to the natural gas grid, in that it will affect economic development, housing growth, and energy reliability, and that a copy of this resolution and the correspondence from Enbridge Gas, Inc. be circulated to MPP Rick Byers, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, AMO, the OEB, and all Ontario municipalities. I so move.
Okay, is there a seconder? Martin, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to resolutions received from other municipalities for information. Does anyone require any of those to be removed? Nope. Okay, someone move that we receive all of those. Monica, thank you. Martin, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. We have no closed session at this point. County report. Do you want to add anything?
I would encourage anyone who's interested in how the taxation works to watch the speed dating 101 of the tax assessments, the tax policy presentation at the February 8th meeting. I'm still trying to re-listen and figure it out. I think you made a really good comment. Just as you think you've got it, ask you 5 minutes later.
Do not try to watch it when you're the least bit tired or have a full stomach, because it will put you to sleep in short order. And that's not a comment on the presenter. It was just the material is fairly dry.
Well, but
It
it's
is.
also very complicated, I think.
Complicated, but it's interesting
It
nonetheless.
is. And the only other thing I wanted to add was that the county planning is introducing a new planning process and working with the lower tier municipalities, looking for efficiencies in response to the ever-changing provincial policy statement and changes that are coming down from the province.
Yep. Thank you, Barb. Members' privilege, good news and celebrations. Anybody, anything to add? I attended a really cool event up at Grey Roots on Family Day that the Junction Community Initiatives sponsored. It was a great event, well attended. They had a whole busload of people from Dundalk go up the highway, and many of them had never been to Grey Roots before, and they were pleasantly surprised at what a wonderful facility it is. So it was a good event. Thank you, Councillor John, for doing that. Thank you. Monica, go ahead.
Yes, and just to that point, just happy Family Day that just passed to everybody, and I was able to go to the Egremont Optimist Club for their Winterfest, and I took my family, and I met some really nice gentlemen, Ray Love and Tony, the blacksmith, and his son Angus. And I know the mayor is, very involved there. And I saw, a wonderful article of him. He looks exact same, hasn't aged for the last years, but it was a really great article, and I just saw, Holstein General Store was there with Wayne, and it was really, really nice. And to see that they have that ice rink there that has been donated to, that's open to the public. It's really special. So I learned something called crockacul. I probably said it wrong. But one of the gentlemen there named Tony built it, and it was just a really great time. And I saw Farmer Neil Aiken there. So it was really great to getting out to Holstein, and just want to say great job on to the Egremont Optimist Club for doing such a great event.
Thank you, Monica.
Welcome.
Okay. We do have a closed session to deal with one item, so I'll read the resolution. Be it resolved that council proceed into closed session at 2:25 PM in order to address matters related to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, specifically a potential land sale, and that all those required remain in attendance. Someone care to move that, please? Martin, thank you. Seconded by Jim, thank you. All those in favor? That is carried. So we will proceed into closed session. We shouldn't be too long, just the one item. And I need to wait. Monica's coming back. There she is. Okay. So I can confirm that we only discussed that item that was listed on our closed meeting resolution and that staff were given direction. Confirming bylaw. Someone care to move that? Martin, second by Monica. Thank you. All those in favor? That's carried. Final adjournment is Jason and Jim. All in favor? We're adjourned.